Starting and running a business is hard, but you don't have to do it alone. Whether you're an established business owner or thinking about starting a side hustle to earn extra income, I am here to teach you how to show up as your unfiltered self, level up your business, and thrive as a mompreneur. Let's embrace the chaos and start enjoying the journey together. I'm Amy Traw, and you're listening to the Motivated Mompreneur Podcast. Welcome back into the Motivated Mompreneur Podcast. I am joined today by Sara Brush of the Centering Cooperative. And today we are talking about a topic that really resonates with all of us, and it's managing stress. And in addition to that, we'll talk about habits to raise self-awareness. Sara, welcome into the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
So before we dive in, tell us more about yourself, who you are and what you do.
Yeah, well, my name is Sara Brush, and I am a wellness coach, and my company is called the Centering Cooperative. And the Centering Cooperative consists of my husband and I, and we work together to help people reignite their excitement, passion, and purpose so they can focus powerfully, think creatively, and harness their highest potential. And we do that by facilitating workplace wellness workshops that incorporate self-exploration, breathing exercises, and also making art. And so I'm committed to helping people manage their stress. I suffered from burnout in my first career. My first career was in corporate, and I ended up quitting my job as a result because I just got to the point where that really felt like it was the only option for me. And I also have suffered from burnout in my journey as an entrepreneur as well. And so I guess it really resonates that burnout is something that can kind of happen under many different types of circumstances. Like, sometimes we kind of think it's that maybe a toxic environment or trying to do too much, but there are so many different ways it can show up. And sometimes it can take a while to really realize that it's happening. And so helping people to raise their self-awareness, checking in with themselves. I, for one, in my corporate career, I really had just gotten to the place where it was like, I had never really even asked myself questions like, how do I feel? How am I doing today? That sort of, basic check-in, and really like listening to my answer and taking steps to change my situation, address the feelings of overwhelm and just stress overload that were happening. I had just kind of gotten into that place of life was happening to me. And it was, it's hard to be there, and it's hard to catch yourself there as well. So, that's what.
That's awesome. And I really appreciate your vulnerability and saying that, you were burnt out in corporate, but then it's also really easy to get burnt out as an entrepreneur, especially as a solopreneur, because you are wearing all the hats. You are constantly working. And that in itself can be very stressful. And I think something that sometimes people overlook. We almost get that shiny object syndrome, like, oh, I'm going to quit my career in corporate and it's all going to be rainbows and, sunshine and unicorns. Yeah. And the reality is you have to learn to manage that stress. So when you went through this process and found out, okay, I am getting burnt out again as an entrepreneur, how did you start to manage that stress? How did you deal with that?
Yeah, it's and since my husband and I are in business together, that was a difficult scenario in itself, and that we were both working together and then, doing life together, raising children together. And so we realized that in this situation, it really came down to our boundaries between work and not work time, because we had kind of gotten into this place where it was like we were basically talking about work, all the time, thinking about work all the time. We had somehow managed to have like less work-life balance than we, had when we were previously working in separate, careers. And so really we needed to kind of initiate some structure and some like planning of our time, like time, zoning our time into chunks so that we were really intentional about like, okay, no, it's, 5 o'clock. We are done talking about work, table it, write it down, and we'll talk about it tomorrow. And reminding each other too, like, oh, I can't talk about this right now. Because the lines can get blurry very easily in that entrepreneur zone. So yeah, absolutely had to start with those delineations, and then also making sure that we were taking care of ourselves separately with our own, personal like stress management techniques that work for us. Like I meditation works really well for me. Breath work is, a go-to as well. And also exercise, exercising for my mental health is a big
Yeah.
priority for me. And it's a very stress relieving activity, but sometimes that can be, the first thing that kind of falls off the list, right? Is that exercise or I gotta go get the kids, or oh, I don't have time. So finding ways to, like my youngest son, he can walk to school. And so I started instead of, doing dedicated workout time during my day, I said, you know what, if I walk him to school and then pick him up from school, I'm getting, 4 miles of walking in just from this trip. And so looking for those sort of clever ways to integrate life, since I do have that flexibility as an entrepreneur. But that shift from kind of corporate life to entrepreneur life, and finding that balance of structure versus too much structure
Right.
was really, really important.
And that can be a huge, huge challenge for so many entrepreneurs as those lines get blurred. And I think a lot of times we forget that having boundaries with our time is so important as a business owner,
Absolutely.
because it's the hustle culture around us. It's almost idolized. It's like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
she's doing it all. Look at her, and you think about it, what is that leading to? It's leading to the burnout. It's leading to the life that we didn't want when we left our 9 to 5 jobs. And we life is meant to be lived, and so often we forget that. But I love how too you're incorporating different ways of managing stress with simple things like exercise into your day, but it accommodates your family too. So getting
Mm-hmm.
creative, like you said, I love that advice, and it's practical. And it's something that's easy to do. Sometimes you just need to get a little creative in thinking of those options.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. My corporate career, I traveled a lot, and that was really, really hard on. I stopped working after my second son was born. So with my first, and there were actually some periods of time where like both my husband and I were traveling. We needed to have grandma watch our son, and that time away and that inability to be as present as a parent as I wanted to be was really also, a motivating factor for me transitioning out of that corporate career. And, you know, embracing the flexibility that I have as an entrepreneur, and making sure that I can still prioritize my children and maintain that. Because it is, when school's done in the afternoon, um, with my children, it's easy sometimes when it's like, oh, I just want to get this done. I'll just keep doing this I'll just work for another hour, and, kind of sacrificing that time. But I, in shifting to, nope, this is my out, in honoring my own boundaries and honoring them for myself and for my kids, it's like, no, I really need to, now it's family time, and spending that time with my kids And that also has been restorative and has helped me, keep going and continued, because those moments when you're an entrepreneur and you feel that overwhelm of like, oh, we're not making progress like we thought, or, whatever it is, it's when we have our priorities and in alignment, it really helps us during those tough moments when we're like, oh, this is too much. So,
Yeah, yeah, because that's something we've all been through, and honoring those boundaries. I really like how you touched upon that because yeah, you have to stay true to yourself. What's the point of setting boundaries if you don't actually adhere to them for yourself, for your family, for your spouse, for your partner, whoever it may be? If you're not honoring those boundaries, why even bother setting them? I know for myself,
mhm.
I have my office. I'm blessed to have a dedicated workspace in my home. And all right, when the bus comes, that door is closed, work mode is off. And
Yeah.
that's hard because it's really tempting, like you said. Oh, I'll just do a couple more, things here and there. It's only going to take me an hour, or, I'll just check these emails. And then before you know it, oh gosh, it's dinner time. Oh, wait, we have to go to this activity or that activity. And it just causes even more chaos. But if you're honoring those boundaries, you're really truly being intentional with the time you have. And I love too how you touched upon the zoning of your time
Mhm.
and really being intentional throughout the day with how you spend your time. This was something I struggled with when I first left my 9 to 5 job. I had scaled back over a period of time, but suddenly you go from having this focused energy of, okay, I have this many hours until the kids get home from school till, all right, I've got 6.5 hours. I've got all day. And then suddenly you find yourself like, what do I do now? You're staring at the computer. There's things you need to be doing. But really setting that intention and being intentional about how you're spending the time, that's been a game changer for me.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And actually, my children, we actually started homeschooling first before enrolling in public school. So um, we actually did 7 years of homeschooling with our kids. And during that time with the homeschooling, we were much better about zoning our time because it was also easier for the kids, right? And lessons, you break things up and you have a break in between subjects and such and such. And so when I was when I started working, we were still homeschooling. And so we were still, zoning our time and separating things. And then when the kids enrolled in public school, I actually had that exact scenario you were talking about where I was like, oh, I've got these 6 hours. This is great. And then I kept, I actually had a much more difficult time of like remembering, like, wait a sec, I need to really zone my time into these pieces and give myself some limits here because I would just let myself get distracted, or even sometimes when I would get stuck on, like if I was writing, a newsletter or something, if I was, having a little bit of a block or frustrated about something, I would let myself sit there for, 2 hours. And it's like, no, it's much more effective if I can just give myself, write for 45 minutes and go take a break. And so it was yeah, funny that like I had already learned that lesson as a homeschooling mom and entrepreneur. And then when my kids went to school, it was like out the window. And I'm like, oh, this is great. And had to kind of go back to that time zoning because yeah, it really helps for breaking up, giving my brain a break. And it was just, yeah, very, very effective for me.
Yeah, and I think part of that is one of the other topics we're going to talk about, self awareness, knowing yourself, knowing how you function, and knowing what's working and not working for you. So,
Mm-hmm.
what tips can you give us to, first of all, raise that self awareness? How do we even begin to develop that skill?
Yeah. I mean, so really it's creating a habit of checking in with yourself. And that, is sometimes easier said than done, but it's also pretty simple, right? Like, and I, you know, I think maybe the simplest way is even just setting a reminder on your phone or scheduling it. Maybe you can do it even if you start with like once a day, and just asking yourself basic questions like, how do I feel right now? Um, you know, how do I want to feel? Why do I feel this way? Just doing some sort of basic self-assessment of how you are. And then, yeah, just increasing that so that you find it becomes much more easy to kind of access and become aware of like, oh, wow, I'm really overwhelmed. I need a break right now, instead of kind of staying in that place of kind of churning, you know, ruminating or chugging through things without like that. And it also is really helpful for those sort of basic things too, as a mom and as, just a busy person. There were times where it's like, I remember, um, I would like finish my water bottle and set it down on my desk and be like, oh, I'll deal with that in, a while. But I didn't have that, self-awareness check-in, or like, I'm going to do it in the morning when I get to work and at lunch and the afternoon, or even setting a timer for, sometimes I've set timers every hour on really stressful days, just where I'm like, I just need to check in with myself every hour. But it was like, I would go, the whole day and be like, oh my gosh, I finished my water at, 10:30 and I didn't get around to, refilling it. So even just those sort of basic self-care, um, needs, they sometimes go out the window when we just don't have that opportunity, when we're not giving ourselves that space to check in. How am I feeling physically? How am I feeling emotionally? Um, and yeah, listening for those answers.
Definitely, because it is a crazy, noisy world out there. And sometimes it takes setting a reminder to bring that awareness back
Mm-hmm.
because,
Mm-hmm.
we're scrolling, we're consuming, we're replying to the emails, phone calls, texts. I mean, all those different things. I've gotten to the point where I've taken all the notifications off of my phone except for calls because if the kid's school is calling me, I want to know about it.
Yep.
But we've become controlled by these little devices, by these alerts, by everything that is competing for our attention. That I love how you're bringing, the habit of self-awareness into the day because that's truly key. When we're kids, we're actually pretty self-aware. Even infants, you
Yeah.
think about it, when they're hungry, what do? They cry. When they need change, what do? They cry. They're aware that they need something. They may not be able to verbalize it, but they're
Yeah.
getting our attention. And so
Mm-hmm.
in the hustle and bustle of life, we forget to check in with ourselves. We
Yep.
forget that, you know, that we need to check in to see how am I doing? Am I doing okay? Do I need water? Do I need to go to the bathroom? Do I need, I can't tell you how many days when I was working in healthcare, it would be, 8 hours. I'm like, oh gosh, I haven't gone to the bathroom. Like,
Yeah.
like things
Yeah.
like that because you're just so caught up in the thick of it, in the moment that
Mm-hmm.
you forget to check in, but it is so important. And even checking in, I think that helps break some of those thought trains that we get
Yes.
stuck in as well. What
Mm-hmm.
are your thoughts on that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I am an anxious person, so I tend towards that ruminating. I can ruminate on the same thoughts, and so yeah, that really, the checking in and that time zoning of my time really does help just interrupt those thoughts if I haven't caught myself.
Right.
So
And to what you said, it gets easier. It's a habit. It's
yes.
just like any other habit. The
Mm-hmm.
more consistent you are, the more you do it, the easier it will become to the point where you probably don't even need to set that timer unless you know you're going to have a busy day ahead of you. Where,
Yep.
okay, I might get too distracted. So let's set it just in case, which is incredible, and
Mm-hmm.
it's learning yourself. And honestly, self awareness in my opinion, is one of the keys to success as a business owner. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, I would say it's really a key to success in life in general.
Yeah.
It's hard to be in any position when you're not, fully taking care of yourself. And especially as moms who, often prioritize taking care of their children and we spend a lot of time thinking about the needs of others. And if we're not, taking care of ourselves first, then obviously that impacts the way we show up and how much we can, give, and how how well we are supporting ourselves is a massive indicator of happiness and fulfillment. So,
Definitely it
yeah.
is. It really does. It impacts everything and how we show up. I really like that too. It impacts how we show up
Mm-hmm.
because if you're not aware of these stories you're telling yourself, if you're holding yourself back because of fear of judgment or showing up or whatever it may be, it inhibits our ability to provide value for others, to show up, to really be our true, authentic selves and serve our community, serve our clients, serve our customers, whether we have a service based business, whether we have a product, any of that. If we're getting in our own heads and not aware of those thoughts, that can break us. Have you
Yeah.
seen that?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I mean, also with our relationships, our partners and our coworkers
Yeah.
and our kids, right? It's the like, if I haven't, if I have skipped my, self-care, if I have skipped my breathing, exercises or my meditation, and my children end up, seeing, oh, crabby mommy's here, I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, sorry. And so, yeah, it really does affect, you know, others around us as well. And so it is so important.
Yeah, because our kids are always watching us and they do notice when crabby mommy pops up and
That's right. They feel it. They feel it.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. So truly improving self-awareness is a habit and it is something that if you take the time to do it can make a positive impact on those
Mhm.
relationships. It can make a positive impact in your business, in your community, in every aspect of life. Sarah, do you have any other good stress management tips for us? What can we do as moms to kind of just manage and calm down some of the stress that we have?
Um, well, specifically, I guess as moms, like I have actually started, like, I incorporate my children into breaks as well. Or even like we do like a 10-minute like YouTube yoga break,
Yeah.
to kind of, so in this space, especially with little kids, when my children were younger and when we were homeschooling, so we, had a lot of time together. And so I didn't have that physical space. And so I just brought them along, right? It's like, this is quiet, whether it was just quiet time or an actual, yeah, we're going to do this little, yoga video, and we're going to do this breathing exercise. And they, they were willing to come along. Like, they were like, okay, mom, this is how we do it. It was great modeling for them as well. And it, supported me. It helped me, get through the day. Yeah, managing my stress in a better way. So specifically, yeah, as moms, that was my go-to.
I love that. And then that's teaching them too different skills that they can use
Yeah.
that will help them in turn as they face all the challenges of life and navigate life and the journey that it is. Sarah, this was fabulous information. I truly appreciate you taking time out of your crazy day to share with our listeners. How can we learn more about you?
Yeah, our website is thecenteringcooperative.com, and we do have a checklist for a downloadable checklist for more passion, purpose, and connection in the workplace. And we're also on Facebook and Instagram as well. Um, and yeah, I'm on LinkedIn. I'm not as active on my social media as I could be,
None
but
of us are. It's okay.
I,
It's
I know.
okay.
Yeah. Um, yeah. So yeah,
Great. Great.
that's how
And
you
we will
reach
be
me.
we will be sure to link all of that up in the show notes. So please check out that checklist. That'll be great information for you because it's something we could all benefit from.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, Sarah, so much. And until next time, stop dreaming and start taking messy action. You've got this. Are you loving what you're hearing? Do us a favor and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss an episode.